Christmas dinner smelled like collard greens, baked turkey, and betrayal. My son Marcus stood up, holding his glass high, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Daddy," he said, sharp and final, "we voted. You're no longer part of this family. Get out of this house." The guests froze. Forks stopped. Breathing turned shallow. Vanessa, his wife, leaned back in her chair, lips curved into a smile she didn't bother to hide. She looked at me the way a cat looks at a bird with clipped wings. I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled back, calm as stone, and slid a brown envelope across the table. "Here is a parting gift for you, son." Marcus hesitated, then snatched it. He tore the flap, pulled out the first page, and read. His eyes widened. His mouth opened. Then he screamed. The whole table jumped. Gasps rippled like wind through tall grass. No one else understood yet. Not Vanessa, not the cousins, not the neighbors who had come to share a holiday meal. But I knew. That scream was the sound of my revenge beginning. They thought they had destroyed me. They were wrong. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The dining room smelled of sweet potatoes and resentment. The oak table between us was scarred from decades of family dinners, birthdays, graduations, Sunday meals after church. Now, it bore the weight of betrayal. Dirty plates sat untouched, coffee cooled in chipped mugs. Marcus stood at the head like a self-appointed judge, his face red, his gestures wild. Vanessa sat across from me, arms folded, nails tapping a rhythm of contempt against her glass. I gripped my fork, its cold metal grounding me as their words cut deeper than knives. "Daddy, we need the money," Marcus said, voice tight with anger. "This house is falling apart. You can't keep hoarding cash while we're stuck here." I raised an eyebrow, my voice low and steady. "Hoarding?" I asked. "I worked my hands raw to pay this mortgage before you were even born. Tell me, son, what's this really about?" Vanessa leaned forward, her smile thin as glass. "It's about progress, mister. Carter, this house is tired. We want new floors, new furniture, a fresh start. You wouldn't understand, but I did understand. Perfectly." On Vanessa's phone, angled toward me, a photo glowed. A sleek white sofa, brass lamps, a kitchen without a trace of soul. This wasn't about repairs. It was about appearances, about showing off a life they hadn't earned. Marcus slapped a folded paper onto the table. A contractor's estimate. 25,000 to start, he said. Another 25 to finish. We already put money down. They're ready next week. We just need you to cover the rest. "You put down money you don't have?" I asked. "It's called financing," Vanessa said quickly. 12 months, no interest. I let out a dry laugh. "You don't even know what easy means." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Marcus leaned in, his voice rising. "You're not getting any younger, Daddy." "Why hold on to savings you'll never use? Let us handle this place." I looked at the table. My hand traced the faint ridge where Marcus had carved his initials when he was 10. Back then, he still thought this house was his anchor. Now he wanted to rip it up by the roots. "I've given you more than enough," I said. My voice was calm, but it carried steel. "You live here rent-free. That's more than most men ever get," Vanessa scoffed. "This place is a museum. We're doing you a favor." Marcus slammed his hand down, rattling the silverware. "You're selfish. You think you're some saint, but you're holding us back." The words landed heavy. I set my fork down carefully, stood up. My chair scraped the hardwood, a sound that silenced the room. I looked at Marcus, then at Vanessa. They thought they'd won. "I see," I said. my tone steady, unshaken. "You've made yourselves clear." I turned and walked toward the hallway. "Wait!" Marcus called, mocking now. "That's it! You're just going to sulk away?" I didn't answer. The doorframe loomed ahead, paint chipped but strong, just like the man who built it. I paused, hand on the wood. My chest rose slow. My breath steadied. They thought they could bury me. But I wasn't finished. I wasn't even close. The morning after Christmas, the house still felt heavy. I came into the dining room and found Marcus waiting for me, papers spread across the oak table like he was hosting a business meeting in my home. Vanessa sat beside him, her phone propped up against a coffee mug, screen glowing with photos of spotless, showroom-perfect rooms. They didn't look up when I walked in. They wanted me to see them already in motion, as if I were late to my own trial. Marcus pushed a folded paper across the table. "Daddy, the house needs work," he said. "We let it go too long. It's time I unfolded it. Contractor's estimate, 25,000 down, another 25 at completion." I set it back on the table. My voice was flat. 25 what? "1,000!" Vanessa answered, quick and confident like she'd been rehearsing. She tilted her phone toward me. "Look at this!" Open concept, new floors, updated kitchen, everything clean and modern. On the screen, a sofa sat in a white room that looked more like a hotel than a home. Brass lights hung from the ceiling, no family photos, no worn Bible on the shelf, no life. "Value goes up immediately," she added. I looked down at the oak table instead, its surface scarred but strong. My fingers traced the ridge where Marcus, at 10 years old, carved his initials with a butter knife. I never sanded it all the way smooth, left it there as a reminder, now that same boy was asking me to strip history out of the house. "This isn't about repairs," I said. Marcus leaned in. "It's about moving forward." "We've got to keep up with the times." He jabbed a finger at the paper. "You've got money sitting there." "Why not use it? Why keep holding on to something you'll never spend?" I met his stare, my voice steady. "You live here rent-free. You eat my food. You use my electricity. And you think I owe you more?" Vanessa shifted, her smile sharp as a blade. "It's not about owing, Mr. Carter. It's about elevating. Right now this house feels heavy like history?" I asked. "Heavy like stuck," she corrected. Marcus's voice rose. "We already put a deposit down. They're ready to start next week. You just need to cover the rest." I tilted my head. "You paid a deposit with money you don't have." "It's called financing," Vanessa said smoothly. 12 months, no interest. Easy. I let out a dry laugh. "You don't even know what easy means." Silence wrapped the room. Then Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was offering wisdom instead of demands. "You're not getting younger, Daddy. Why let savings rot when we can build something better? This house could be worth double." Triple, I pressed my palm flat on the oak. The table felt warm, alive. "This house is worth more than money," I said. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Here we go again with the speeches." Marcus slammed the table, rattling the plates left from last night. "Why can't you just let us handle it?" I stood, slow and steady. My chair scraped across the hardwood, the sound sharp as judgment. "If you want a new life," I said, "build it. Don't tear mine down to get it." The silence that followed wasn't ordinary. It was heavy, like the whole house was listening. Marcus stared at me, his jaw tight. Vanessa tapped her nails against the phone screen, the rhythm quick and impatient. But neither of them spoke. I left them there, surrounded by glossy photos of rooms with no soul and papers full of numbers they couldn't afford. And as I walked away, one truth settled into me like a nail hammered deep. They weren't trying to fix the house. They were trying to erase it. That night the house was too quiet, not peaceful, not restful. The kind of quiet that presses against your ribs, reminding you that something has been broken. I sat on the edge of my bed. The springs creaked under my weight, the same way they had for decades. My hand found the drawer of the nightstand. The wood stuck a little, the way it always did. Inside was an old photo album, leather cracked, corners worn soft. I laid it across my lap and opened it. The first page groaned like an old hymn. There was Marcus, 6 years old, front teeth missing, clutching a football too big for his arms, his smile so wide it could have lit the block. I remembered that day. I'd sold my old Chevy for a few $100s just to pay his school fees. Walked to work for weeks. Told Lillian it was nothing, just a car. She squeezed my hand and said she knew better. I turned the page. Marcus in high school, red clay on his knees from football practice. I'd worked overtime that month, back screaming, just to afford those cleats. He came home grinning, said he'd scored 2 touchdowns. Another page, his graduation, black cap and gown, the auditorium hot as July. My shirt soaked through, but I sat tall in the back row. He hugged me after and said, "I'll make you proud, Daddy." I believed him. I kept turning, each page heavier than the last. Marcus with his first car, not new, but mine before his. I'd handed him the keys, knowing I'd never get behind the wheel again. He laughed, called me the best. Marcus with his first apartment, I paid the deposit, said it was just until he found his footing. He never stood long on his own. And finally, Marcus with Vanessa. Their smiles polished, their clothes sharp, but in his eyes I saw it even then. Hunger, not the kind you feed with food, the kind that never gets full. I closed the album slowly. My hand rested on the leather cover, shaking. Not from age, from rage. I looked across the room at Lillian's picture on the dresser. Her church hat tilted just so, the same smile that steadied me for 40 years. "I tried, Lil," I whispered, my voice cracked, "but trying wasn't enough." "He don't see it. He don't care. The room didn't answer. Rooms don't. They just hold your words." Snow fell outside, thick and slow, the flakes glowing under the streetlight. The world looked calm, but my chest burned like fire. I pressed my palm flat against the cold glass of the window. My reflection stared back at me. Grey hair, tired eyes, skin worn from years of work. For decades, I had been the foundation, the provider, the forgiver. I carried burdens so my son wouldn't have to. I let him live easy so he could grow strong. But instead, he grew greedy. Instead, he mistook sacrifice for weakness. I sat back on the bed, my jaw tightening. No more. If he wanted war, he'd get it. But it wouldn't be a war of fists or shouting. It would be a war of wisdom, of paper, of truth, the kind of war an old man wins when the young forget who taught them how to fight. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, hands clasped tight. My voice dropped low, steady. "They think I'm finished," I whispered. The words hung in the room like smoke. "They don't know who they're dealing with." The house slept. At least it pretended to. I moved through the kitchen in the dark, phone light held low, casting long shadows across the oak cabinets. The table wasn't set for dinner tonight. It was cluttered with papers, bills, receipts, statements. They had left their mess out like breadcrumbs. I pulled one closer. Credit card bill, 12,000 in debt, designer handbags, steakhouse dinners, boutique clothes. I shook my head. My thumb traced the red stamp across the top. Past due. Another paper. Mortgage notice. A condo they bragged about flipping. 2 payments missed, bank threatening foreclosure. So this was their empire, built on sand. I took out a notebook. Scribbled account numbers, dates, late fees, evidence. The refrigerator hummed, steady as a heartbeat. The only sound besides the scratch of my pen. Then I heard it creak. The stairwell groaned under a heavy foot. My pulse quickened, but my face stayed calm. Years of building houses had taught me, when wood shifts, you listen. Daddy, Marcus's voice floated down the hall, thick, suspicious. I clicked the light off, let the darkness take me. His silhouette appeared at the far end, stretched long by the glow of a lamp behind him. He stood there waiting. I didn't move, didn't answer. The house knew me better than it knew him. Every creak, every draft, every shadow belonged to me. I melted back into the dark. Marcus lingered, shifting his weight. Then finally he turned, footsteps fading upstairs. I exhaled slow. The notebook in my hand felt heavier now. Not with paper, with power. I had seen enough. Their debts were a grave waiting to be filled. And they'd handed me the shovel. The old oak bar smelled of bourbon and wood smoke. I sat in the back booth, a notebook open in front of me, pages filled with numbers, overdue notices and debts my son thought I'd never see. I wasn't drinking, just sitting with a glass of water, hands steady. Across from me, Reverend Thomas leaned forward, elbows on the table. His sweater was frayed, but his eyes were sharp as ever. We'd known each other since we were boys, long before grey hair, long before we buried our wives. "Talk to me, Eli," he said. "What's going on in that house?" I told him. About Marcus standing at the table, disowning me in front of family. About Vanessa's smirk, about the folder I'd handed him, the scream it pulled out of his throat. And then I told him about the bills, the debts, the lies scattered like confetti across my kitchen. He listened without interrupting, just nodded slow, the way a preacher does when he's heard sin before. When I finished, he set his glass down with a hard clink. "They think old means weak," he said. His voice was gravel, but it carried the weight of a sermon. "Show them old means wise." I let the words sit. "I don't want to fight them, Thomas," I said, "but I won't let them bury me in my own house." Reverend Thomas cracked a rare grin. "Then don't fight with fists. Fight with truth. That's a weapon they can't block." I opened my notebook, tapping the page with my pen. "I've got their account numbers." Overdue notices, missed payments, enough to sink them. Thomas leaned closer. "Paper never lies. Build your case, Eli. Make it airtight. When the time comes, you won't need to shout. The truth will speak loud enough." I sat back, closing the book. My chest felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because I finally had direction. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about strategy, the kind of fight an old man wins when the young forget who taught them how to stand. I looked Thomas in the eye, my voice low. "They think I'm finished," I said. He nodded once. "Then prove you're not." I walked the halls that night with no light on. Every creak, every shadow, every corner knew me because I built it. Not hired hands, not contractors, my hands. I ran my palm across the wall in the hallway. The paint was cracked in spots, but the bones were strong. I remembered the spring I tore my shoulder setting the beams. Lillian at the bottom of the ladder, one hand shading her eyes, calling up, "It's level, Eli. It'll hold." That was her word. Hold. And it did. Through storms, through grief, through birthdays, funerals, Sunday dinners, and late nights when the world outside wasn't kind to men who looked like me. This house was more than wood and nails. It was survival. It was proof. I remembered the first night after we moved in. No furniture, but a mattress on the floor. We ate fried chicken out of a brown paper bag, laughing. Lillian humming gospel between bites. Marcus was just a baby, sleeping on a blanket beside us. She looked at me, eyes shining. We made it. I didn't say a word. I just kissed her forehead and let the walls remember for me. Years later, those same walls watched me carry her up the stairs when the sickness got too strong. They heard her prayers whispered into the night. They held her laughter, her tears, her last breath. Now my son wanted to rip them down for granite countertops. I stopped at the doorway to the living room. The carpet was worn, the curtains faded, but in my mind, I saw it how it used to be, filled with voices, food spread across the table, children playing tag around the sofa. This house had carried generations, and I'd be damned if greed would erase it. I whispered into the empty room as if Lillian was still listening. They think this house is just walls. They don't know it's a monument. My fist clenched tight, nails digging into my palm. I won't let them take it. The walls said nothing back, but they didn't have to. They had already sworn to hold. The next morning, I put on my best suit. Not for church, not for show, for war. The law office sat on the corner of Main, brick building with a brass plate that caught the winter sun. Inside, the air smelled of paper and ink. A young receptionist looked up. "Can I help you, sir?" "Elijah Carter," I said. "I'm here to see Attorney Harris." She nodded, led me down a hall lined with degrees and certificates. On the wall, I saw faces. Black men and women who fought their way through a system that never wanted them. Harris had been one of them. When I stepped into his office, he stood, hand extended. "Mr. Carter, I knew your wife. Lillian was a fine woman." I nodded, throat tight for a second. "She was." We sat. He opened a yellow legal pad. "What brings you here today?" I laid the notebook on his desk, the one filled with Marcus and Vanessa's debts, account numbers, and late notices. "My son thinks I'm finished," I said. "He wants this house. Wants me gone, but he don't know I still got fight left." Harris adjusted his glasses, flipped through the pages. His eyes sharpened. "You've done half my job for me," he said. "We can move fast. First, your will gets rewritten. Marcus and his wife are cut out entirely. Second, we transfer the deed into a living trust. That locks it down tight. They can't touch it, not without your word. Third, we put protections on your accounts. Freeze anything that looks suspicious." His pen moved quick, scratching lines across the page. Each stroke sounded like a nail sealing a coffin. "What about them?" I asked. Harris looked up, steady. "If they're using your name or address for any of this debt, we'll catch it. And when we do, we'll have proof they're not just greedy, they're reckless." I sat back in the chair. For the first time since Christmas dinner, I felt something lift from my chest. Not joy, not relief, power. Harris slid the new documents toward me. "Sign here, Mr. Carter. This house will belong to your trust, not your son." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. The ink hit the page, bold and final. When I finished, Harris leaned forward, his voice low. "You've just made yourself untouchable." I stood, buttoned my jacket, looked him in the eye. "They thought they could bury me," I said. He nodded. "Now they'll learn who dug the grave." The sun had barely set when I came back from town. Cold wind cut across the porch, carrying the smell of pine smoke from a neighbor's chimney. I reached for the doorknob. It didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. The key I'd carried for 40 years no longer fit the lock. I stood there for a moment, the winter air biting at my neck, listening to my own house breathe without me. Through the curtains I saw lights glowing warm, shadows moving across the living room. My living room. I knocked once hard. Marcus opened the door a crack, face tight. "What do you want?" I narrowed my eyes. My house. He shook his head. Not anymore. We changed the locks. It's safer this way. Safer for who? For everyone, he said quickly. You're not thinking clearly anymore, Daddy. You've been making bad decisions. Vanessa and I talked and... Talked? I cut in. Or plotted. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of Vanessa, lounging on the sofa like a queen, phone in hand. She didn't even look up. Marcus lowered his voice like he was doing me a kindness. We're telling people you're not well, that you're slipping. It'll make things easier when... When what? I asked. He didn't answer, but I already knew. Guardianship. Control. A paper trail that would turn me from father to burden in the eyes of the world. I let out a slow breath, straightened my shoulders. You think you can write me out of my own life? Marcus tightened his grip on the door. It's for the best. Then he closed it in my face. The lock clicked. I stood there on the porch, snow beginning to fall, covering my boots in silence. My chest rose once heavy. Humiliation burned hot, but underneath it something steadier grew. Resolve. They thought a locked door would stop me, but I'd already opened bigger ones. The night was cold, but I didn't shiver. I turned from the door, pulled my coat tighter, and walked down the steps. I had no bed waiting for me inside, but I had something better waiting down the road. A plane. The churchyard was still that night. Snow blanketed the ground, softening every stone. The iron gate groaned when I pushed it open, the sound echoing through the cold. I walked the narrow path between headstones, boots crunching against the frost. My breath hung in the air, white and heavy, before fading into the dark. I stopped at the place I knew best, Lillian's grave, her name carved deep into granite, steady as her smile had been in life. Beside her, markers for my parents, my grandparents, Carter blood, laid down in rows, holding the ground when the world tried to take it. I knelt, the cold seeping through my trousers. My hand brushed the stone. I tried, Lil, I whispered. Lord knows I tried. But our boy, he don't see it. He don't respect what we built. The silence pressed against me, heavy. But I felt her, same as I always did, not in words, but in the stillness that wrapped me up like a coat. I bowed my head. They changed the locks. Told folks I'm losing my mind, but I remember every nail in that house. I remember the sweat, the sacrifice, and I won't let them erase it. The wind stirred, carrying the faint sound of church bells from blocks away. Midnight service letting out. Voices singing, muffled but strong. I closed my eyes. I saw my father's hands, rough and cracked from field work. My mother's voice rising in him, even when she had nothing left but faith. Lillian's laugh, filling rooms brighter than any light. They had carried burdens heavier than mine, and they hadn't broken. I pressed my palm against the stone. Give me your strength. One more time. The snow fell harder, dusting my shoulders, my hat, my hands, but I didn't feel cold. I stood, shoulders squared, looked out across the graveyard, names and dates staring back. Every stone was a witness, every ancestor a reminder. I wasn't fighting just for me, I was fighting for them, for every sacrifice buried in this ground. I turned back toward the gate, voice low, steady as a prayer. They think I'm finished, but they don't know whose blood runs in me. The iron groaned again as I stepped out, and the snow kept falling, white against the night, like a blessing. Word reached me before the invitations did. Sarah Johnson, one of Lillian's oldest friends, called me on the church phone. Her voice shook with anger. Elijah, she said, Your boy and that wife of his are planning something at Christmas. They've been telling folks you're not well, saying you can't handle your affairs. They're fixing to announce guardianship at dinner. I closed my eyes, pinched the bridge of my nose. So that was the game. Not just whispers, not just locks. They wanted to stand me up in front of kin and neighbours, strip me of dignity with witnesses clapping along. Thank you, Sarah, I said. My voice was calm, but inside, fire burned steady. Don't worry, I'll be there. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open, every page filled with numbers, dates, debts, and receipts. My pen tapped the wood as I planned, not fast, not frantic, precise, one move at a time. Harris, my lawyer, had already locked the trust, rewritten the will, and frozen my accounts. But this wasn't just about papers. This was about truth. I gathered the statements showing Marcus's condo 2 months behind. The credit card bills, dripping with red stamps, the voice message from the bank chasing Vanessa, proof stacked like bricks, each one stronger than the last. The evidence of their greed was a house of its own, one I would build in front of every eye that mattered. I closed the notebook and looked across the room. The old photo of Lillian smiled back at me from the mantel. "They want a stage," I whispered. "Then I'll give them one." Outside, snow fell steady, muffling the world. But inside me, something sharp rang clear as a bell. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't argue. I'd let their own lies bury them. Christmas dinner wasn't going to be my humiliation. It was going to be their judgment day. The week before Christmas, I worked in silence. While Marcus and Vanessa played host in my house, I played architect in the shadows, not of walls and beams, but of truth. On the dining table, I laid everything out. Credit card statements stacked high, red-stamped mortgage notices, bank alerts with words like final warning. Every page was a brick, every number a nail. I slid them into folders, neat and precise. Then came the recordings. Voicemails from collectors, hounding Marcus about money he didn't have. One from a furniture company threatening repossession. I played them back, listening to the desperation in the voices. Proof you couldn't argue with. Next, the photos. Screenshots of Vanessa's online shopping sprees, designer handbags, $1,000 dresses, trips booked but never paid. All while they sat in my house telling me I was holding them back. I put it all together, labeled, organized, airtight. That evening I walked back into Harris's office. The lawyer raised an eyebrow when he saw the folders. "You've been busy, Mr. Carter." "I've been thorough," I said. "If they want to stand me up in front of family, I'll make sure the truth stands taller." He opened the files, flipping page after page, his eyes sharpened. "This isn't just mismanagement. This is negligence. If they've tied any of this to your name, they've committed fraud." "Then let them explain that in front of everyone," I said. Harris leaned back, impressed. "You've built a case stronger than most men half your age. When you show this, they won't have anywhere to run." I closed the folders, tied them with string. My hands felt steady, solid. For weeks, Marcus had painted me as weak. Vanessa had whispered that I was slipping. They thought they were writing the story, but I held the pen now, and I wasn't writing weakness. I was writing their downfall. When I left Harris's office, snow was falling again. I walked slow, each step firm against the frozen ground. The folder under my arm was heavy, not with paper, with proof, with justice, with the end of their game. I whispered to myself, voice low like a vow, "Christmas dinner will not be my funeral. It'll be their reckoning." Christmas dinner came again, but the house felt different. The air was thick with whispers, Plates clattered nervously. Eyes kept cutting toward me, then away just as fast. Word had spread. Marcus and Vanessa had been busy. They told cousins I was losing my memory. They told neighbors I wasn't fit to handle my own affairs. They painted me as a burden, an old man too stubborn to know when to sit down. And now, with everyone gathered, they were ready to make it official. Marcus stood at the head of the table, glass in hand, voice loud enough to rattle the chandelier. "Family!" he said, smiling too wide. "We need to address something tonight. Daddy has done a lot for us, but he's no longer able to manage things. It's time for us to step in, for his own good." Murmurs rippled around the room. Some nodded, some frowned. Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes shining with triumph. "We love him, but love means making hard choices. From now on, Marcus and I will be taking over his affairs. We'll handle the house, the finances, everything." I sat silent, my hands folded on the table. Cousin Ray cleared his throat. "Elijah, is that true? You not able to keep up anymore?" All eyes turned to me. Marcus smiled like a hunter about to close the trap. "It's better this way, Daddy. You don't need the stress. We've already spoken to some folks about guardianship. This is the right decision. The right decision." That was the lie they wanted written in stone. I leaned back in my chair, slow and steady. My eyes swept the table. Cousins, aunts, church friends, neighbors, all waiting. Then I reached down beside me. The room stilled. I placed a thick brown folder on the table. My voice was calm, cold. "You want to take the floor, son? Go ahead. But when you're done, I'll take it back." Vanessa frowned. Marcus laughed nervously. "Daddy, what's that supposed to mean?" I tapped the folder once. The sound echoed. "It means I came prepared." The murmurs grew louder. Chairs shifted. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to keep control. "You don't need to make this harder. Everyone here knows." "Knows what?" I cut in, sharp. He froze. I leaned forward, sliding the folder toward me. My hand rested on it like a preacher on a Bible. "This house has history. This family has history. And tonight, every lie you've told is about to meet the truth." Gasps fluttered through the room. Vanessa's smile cracked. Marcus's face flushed. The trap they thought they built was about to close on them instead, and they didn't even know it yet. The folder sat heavy in front of me. Every eye at the table locked on it. Marcus tried to laugh it off. "Daddy, stop with the dramatics." "You're embarrassing yourself." Vanessa reached for his arm, whispering, "Don't worry." He's bluffing. But my hand flipped the folder open. Papers spilled across the table like cards in a dealer's hand. The first page slid toward Marcus. Red letters screamed across the top, "Past due." "Mortgage notice," I said. My voice carried like a gavel. "Your little condo?" 2 months behind. Bank already calling. Gasps rippled through the family. Cousin Ray leaned forward, squinting at the paper. Marcus's face drained. He shoved it aside. That's temporary." I dropped the second page. A credit card bill. $12,000. Designer handbags. Luxury restaurants. "Temporary?" I asked. "Looks permanent to me." Aunt Jo shook her head. "Lord have mercy." Vanessa shifted in her seat. "That has nothing to do with you, Mr. Carter." "Oh, but it does," I said, sliding another page across. "Because you've been using my address, my name, tied your mess to my house." Murmurs turned to outrage. Someone hissed under their breath. Marcus slammed the table. "Stop! This isn't the time or the place." "This is exactly the time," I said. My voice didn't rise, but it cut sharper than a shout. "You tried to make me small in front of this family. Tried to paint me weak. Now let them see who you really are." I held up the next sheet. A financing agreement, unpaid, interest climbing by the day. You signed contracts you can't afford. Furniture you can't pay for. Vacations you never finished paying off. Vanessa's face flushed, her hands trembling. He doesn't have to see that. I cut her off. The whole world can see it. I spread the papers wide across the oak table, the same table Marcus had once carved his initials into as a boy. Now it bore witness to his downfall. The family leaned closer, eyes darting, whispers rising. "Marcus, is this true?" Cousin Ray demanded. "Vanessa, you've been lying," Aunt Jo asked, voice sharp with disgust. Marcus stammered, reaching for the papers. "He's twisting it. This is private." I snapped the folder shut, the sound cracking through the room like thunder. "Private ended when you tried to make me a fool," I said. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Vanessa's eyes darted, searching for escape. Marcus sank back into his chair, shoulders slumped, sweat shining on his forehead. The trap they built had snapped shut. But it wasn't me inside. It was them. The room sat frozen. Papers lay scattered across the oak table, proof in black and red, proof no one could deny. Marcus's face burned crimson. Vanessa's smile was gone, replaced by tight lips and trembling hands. Cousin Ray broke the silence first. "Marcus, all this time you've been lying?" Aunt Jo shook her head, eyes narrowed at Vanessa. "And you sat here letting us think Elijah was the one slipping?" Murmurs swelled, sharp as knives, whispers of shameful, disgrace, after all he's done. Marcus stood, fists clenched. "Y'all don't understand. We were trying to build a better future." "On his back?" Cousin Ray snapped. "Using his name?" Dragging him through the dirt. Marcus's voice cracked. "It's not like that!" Vanessa pushed up from her chair, voice shrill. "We did what we had to. He's old. He doesn't need this house. We're the ones living here now." I rose slowly. My chair scraped the floor, the sound heavy as a hammer. All eyes turned to me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "This house," I said, each word steady, "was built by my hands, paid for with my sweat. It held your mother's laughter, your childhood, your future, and you thought you could steal it with lies." Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I pulled another document from the folder, this one fresh, crisp, signed in ink. "The deed is no longer in my name," I said. "It's in a trust. My trust. You can't touch it. Not now. Not ever." Gasps shot around the table. Vanessa's face drained white. "And as for you living here," I continued, my eyes locking on Marcus, "you've got 30 days. After that, you and your wife will be out. For good." Vanessa stepped forward, voice cracking. "You can't do that." I cut her off with one look. "I already have." The family murmured louder now, voices full of approval, some even clapping lightly. "You tell him, Elijah," Aunt Jo said firmly. "You got every right," Cousin Ray added. Marcus sank back into his chair, chest heaving, eyes darting from me to the papers like a cornered animal. "You thought I was weak," I said, my voice dropping low. "You thought old meant finished. But you forgot. Old hands built this house, and old hands can still close doors." Silence fell again, thick with finality. I gathered the papers, stacked them neatly, and tucked them back into the folder. Then I walked away from the table, leaving my son and his wife sitting in the ruins of their own schemes. They wanted me gone. Instead, they were the ones being evicted. 30 days passed. The morning of the deadline, the house was quiet again. But this time, it was the good kind of quiet. Marcus and Vanessa had packed what they could. The rest they left behind. like scavengers abandoning scraps. No more shouting, no more tapping nails against the oak, just silence. I stood in the doorway, folder in hand, watching as they carried their last box to the car. Marcus didn't look at me. Vanessa muttered something under her breath, too low to catch. The engine started. Tires crunched across the snow. And just like that, they were gone. I stepped back inside. The air felt lighter, as though the house itself exhaled. I walked the halls slowly, touching the walls I had built, the floors I had laid, the memories still alive in the wood. Lillian's laughter, Marcus's childhood footsteps, Sunday dinners after church, all still here. But I knew something else too. It was time to pass it on. A week later, the papers were signed, the house sold to a young black family, husband, wife, and 2 children with eyes bright as sunrise. They stood in the living room, marveling at the space. "This place has history," I told them. "Treat it like it treats you, with respect. And it'll hold." The father shook my hand tight. The mother hugged me. The children ran through the halls, laughter echoing like it used to. I walked away with the proceeds, not to spend, but to invest. Harris helped me set up a scholarship fund in Lillian's name for young men and women chasing education the way Marcus once had. Legacy secured. Later that night, I sat at my desk, pen in hand, paper waiting. I wrote one last letter to Marcus. "Son, I loved you more than you'll ever know. But love without respect is wasted. I built a home, not just for you, but for the generations after you. You chose greed over gratitude, vanity over legacy. I forgive you, but I will not follow you. My future belongs to those who honor the past." I folded the letter, sealed it, and placed it in the drawer beneath Lillian's photo. Then I sat back, breathing deep, steady. They thought they had buried me, but roots don't die, they spread.